Hello everybody in the Social Responsibility and Computing course. Today's lecture is going to be on Chapter 7, Evaluating and Controlling Technology. So this is Chapter 7. We've already covered Chapter 6. Chapter 6 was on work, if you remember, and that was part of the midterm exam. So we've already covered that material. So we're moving on to Chapter 7. All right, so what do we have here? We are talking about evaluating and controlling technology and the ethical concerns related to it. So what we're going to cover is the information, knowledge, and judgment, computers and community, as well as the digital divide and evaluations of the impact of computer technology, then making decisions about technology and how it affects us, not only in our daily lives, but as a society in general. So information, knowledge, and judgment. So is the crowd really wise? And is there wisdom in crowds? Which is actually a good question. Yeah, there could be. In fact, there's a lot of applications out today that take into the consideration of crowdsourcing, which is a concept of taking and sourcing information or sourcing data from crowds of people. So there's a nice app out there actually right now for the blind. The app, a blind person would take a picture of something and then it would capture it in the app. And then crowdsourcing would occur where there's people who log into the app who can see, take a look at the picture, and then they say what the picture is. For example, if the blind person took a picture of a can of tomato sauce, because they can't see the label on the can. So they take a picture of it and then it gets uploaded into the app, and then somebody else just looks randomly and just says, oh, that's a can of tomato sauce, and answers correctly, hopefully. And what they're looking for is one person or multiple people, I guess. Well, they only need one person really, from a group of people who are willing to answer questions like that. Or basically, a picture flashes on their end of the app and it looks like a can of tomato sauce, so they write down can of tomato sauce. And that's called crowdsourcing. So that's crowdsourcing. So apparently there is wisdom in the crowd if we consider crowdsourcing as a concept. You can ask people a lot of questions. In fact, that's how Wikipedia came out. Wikipedia is a crowd source where you've got groups of people who write information in an encyclopedia, aka encyclopedia. Not really an encyclopedia though, because nothing is fact-checked. So there's a daunting amount of information on the web. Much of the information is not correct. As we all know, you can't trust everything you read on the internet. Search engines are replacing librarians, but websites are ranked by popularity, not by expert evaluation, which is also another problem. And then wisdom of the crowd, rating by public of websites. So the crowd can be smart if the crowd is available for ethical reasons and the crowdsourcing is being honest and straightforward in terms of its information. There's also some negative sides of that as well. If millions of people participate, the result will be useful. If nobody participates, then those kinds of apps and those kinds of services are kind of useless if nobody participates. And it's involuntary participation. So you might imagine sources like Wikipedia as an example that rely on crowds of people contributing their knowledge to this global database. Well, there's a group of people, and I'm just going to give you an example of a negative here. There's a group of people that like to go into Wikipedia and change the good information to wrong information. Usually these are kids or pranksters or people who want to, kind of put out fake news, or fake information in general, because their intentions are to have fun, I guess, or they're bored maybe. And what they're trying to do is kind of, play into the weakness of the crowdsourcing with the concept that not everybody is ethical when it comes to the crowd. And who do you know who's in the crowd who might not have good intentions? So here's our slide on Wikipedia, written by volunteers. Some posts are biased and not accurate. Some are completely wrong. So generally speaking, there was an old saying, the people that know the least talk the most. And the more you think you know, the less you really know, which is another saying. And the truly intelligent people are aware of what they don't know. And so if you play off of the stereotype of the traditional sayings and the kind of the feeling of, people who are very knowledgeable don't talk. People who know their information generally keep it to themselves. And those people who don't know anything, those are the people who talk the most. And so if you're relying upon an internet website and you want to get people to post on it, you're going to get the idiots posting on it. Not to say if you're one of those people that likes to post on the internet that you're an idiot, but stereotypically, the people that do the most posting, who write the most blogs, who share the most information, really know the least amount of information because of it's just the way things work. The smarter you are, the more you're aware of what you don't know, and the less of an expert you try to sound like. The people that have inferiority complexes and personality disorders where they need to feel important or they need to have this connection with the world or this fame generally are not the most intelligent people of the population, and there's something that they need from this, which promotes them to do a lot of blogging and a lot of writing and a lot of editing on Wikipedia. And so you're really getting the cream of the crop, so to speak. Although anyone can write, most people do not. The intelligent people don't. Those that do typically are educated and experts, we would hope. Or they're proclaiming to be an expert. They're trying to be an expert, but they're not an expert. And so they feel like if they post, they will become an expert. A little bit of controversy with that. So when evaluating information that's on the web, think about the wisdom of the crowd. So the problem is you have unreliable information that's not a new problem. It's been around for a while. People are finally starting to get familiar with it. If you think about the presidential election that we had and all of the fake news and all of the political campaigning that was going on, that was really persuasive, that was really kind of unreliable information and propaganda, well, people are starting to realize not everything on the internet's real. And if we want to push an agenda, we want to win an election, then we post a bunch of crap out there and see who bites it and see who believes it. And majority of the people still don't understand that the information is not real. They still think it is. The web can magnify this problem. It does. Rating systems are also easily manipulated. You can't even trust Yelp if you think about it, because Yelp is a rating system, and where you say, this restaurant gets 5 stars, really, but those 5 stars are accumulation of ratings that were paid for. Like the restaurant owner gave everybody $20 if they would post 5 stars and give it a nice review. So how can you really tell that that's actually real? It's supposed to be against the rules, and it is, but competitors do go on Yelp and give places bad reviews so that they can promote their own business. Hey, this sushi restaurant right across the street from my sushi restaurant, I'm going to give them bad reviews so that people will come to my restaurant instead of that one. It's like high school stuff that's been going on for years, and adults continue to do it, and it happens all over the internet. And who knows, maybe these aren't really adults, these are kids that are on the internet. And if you take a poll of who's on the internet, it's generally the 18 to 25-year-old group. So you have to think the maturity level of those people not so high compared to more mature adults. So I know most of you guys listening to this are probably between the ages of 18 and 25, which is understandable. You guys are the ones who are on the internet. So you guys are the ones who should probably be aware of the fact that not everything on the internet's real. And not everybody has good intentions either. So we also have vulnerable viewers, less educated individuals, and children. Yes, we have older adults who are not educated on technology, who did not grow up with computers, who are now using computers, who get scammed. They get scammed all the time. In fact, that's the children, usually the people under the age of 18, and the adults, the older adults who are, 55, let's say 65, 75 years old, the way older, who are playing around because they want to connect with the family. I guess that's why this new product, GrandPad, actually has become more popular. Is because it's private, it's not on the open internet. But they get scammed. You know, they get the little pop-ups that say, here, enter in your credit card number now because your bank needs it, when they don't even have a bank account, or they don't have a credit card, or they have a credit card, but they don't, they don't do online banking. It's a scam. So less educated individuals who are on the internet may not necessarily be aware of the vulnerabilities, as well as children. One of the biggest groups of victims are children. Children are constantly, in fact, it's on the rise right now. Actually, since about 2019, which is last year, all the way up to current present day, it has been slowly increasing the amount of child sex trafficking that occurs on the internet. Adults posing as children, meeting other children at malls and around, luring victims in, capturing them, pretty much kidnapping them and turning them into sex slaves in this country, believe it or not. So that is actually on the rise, and it's a lot of the predators use the internet to capture those children. So responsibilities of site operators should should identify user-supplied content versus real content. Not to say that user-supplied content isn't real content. News sources and things that come from users are not necessarily fact-checked, nor are they necessarily legitimate. There's a lot of fake news out there that comes from user-supplied content. But yeah, site operators should verify, or should at least notify people or tell people that the user-supplied content is being used and it's not like legitimate authorized broadcaster content. And then also make clear which information has been verified and which information has not been verified, especially when it comes to news stories. It's not such a good idea to put news stories out there and cover, what's happening in the world today when we don't know that that's actually true. There's a lot of manipulation of images as well. Altering of movies and videos. They use special effects to add creativity, enjoyment, and entertainment. Well, people do that to pictures too. People can use the technology for deception and fraud. And the ease with which you can modify digital images and videos have become much easier in the modern day. In fact, you don't even have to do it yourself anymore. You can hire a company to make a fake vacation for you for social media. Now, I think this is kind of pathetic. But let's say, for example, all your friends are going on vacation. I don't think anyone's traveling right now with the coronavirus, but, let's just imagine we weren't in a time of crisis in America, and that people were going on vacation, and, let's say you can't afford to go on vacation. Or let's say you're a full-time student. You want to compete with the images of what everybody else is putting out there. And so you hire this company, you pay like $20-$30, and they put together a fake vacation for you. So, hey, you went to Europe, and here's your picture in front of the blah, blah, blah monument. And here's your picture here, and here you are at the cafe having fun. And here's your fake significant other. And here is your family, or whatever you're trying to portray. It's pretty easy. There's services and agencies that you can hire that will put together the whole package for you. And then you put it on your social media and you go, look, there's my European vacation. I think that's pretty pathetic and sad, but people do it all the time. So another question, you should think about is, should news agencies modify images and videos? Which they are doing, adding things to videos, adding things to pictures. Fake photos is not a new phenomena. So more people can do it now because it's easier than it has been before. And then you have those lovely services that will do it for you if you can't figure it out. So writing, thinking, and deciding. There's new tools that have displaced skills that once were important. Well, writing skills for that matter. I ran across the other day, a friend of mine actually teaches at the high school level, and she teaches English. And we ran across an interesting article the other day, and she was showing it to me. and I was really kind of shocked by it. And it had something to do with, the average writing skill of your average high school graduate is now less than it used to be, well, in the past, but it's now less than the third grade level. So it used to be fifth or sixth grade was the average. This is for a high school graduate, by the way. High school graduates in writing exams, testing at graduating level, tested around the fifth or sixth grade. Now they're on the third or fourth grade. They dropped a little bit further. It's because kids don't write anymore. They go to the internet and they copy and paste the content and they stick it in their paper and they call it their own content. They don't actually know how to write anymore. And which might explain why in colleges now you have a writing proficiency exam that you have to take before you can graduate to demonstrate that you actually can write, because we have people who can't read and write who graduate from high school, and people who can't read and write and graduate from college. Why? Because they relied on the internet to be their reading and writing source. They can't read a book, so they get the audio version of it on the internet. They can't write, so they plagiarize. They copy and paste from the internet. Not such a good idea. So people are willing also to let their computers do their own thinking. Just watch a group of people go out. Watch a group of kids. They go, what should we have to eat? The first thing that happens is you pull your phone out. Or what should we do now? And then the phone comes out. Or what's the answer to this question? And then the phone comes out. And so instead of thinking, they immediately go to the phone so they can Google the answer. It's kind of like if you were to learn how to do math using a calculator, immediately you just pull out the calculator. What's 1 + 1? Oh, let's pull the calculator out. I don't know the answer to that. And so they're trained not to think. Instead, they're trained to go look at the internet. For example, how long should you boil a hard-boiled egg? Most people think, let's go to the internet. Pull your phone out. Oh, it's 8 to 10 minutes. Oh, okay. But because they don't know that, because they don't remember that, I don't know. You should know how to hard-boil an egg. Maybe you don't hard-boil eggs. Who knows? But, that's kind of an example. Reliance on the computer system over human judgment. It has may become institutionalized. Yes, it has. Actually, people trust the computer more than they trust the human, which is actually kind of funny, especially when it comes to, let's say, for example, driving directions. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at the GPS and even Google Maps and Google driving instructions, and I go, I know a shorter cut. I know a better way of going. It's funny. You always drive home to see what the mapping system would look like. If you try it a couple of times, you go, it takes me on an interesting route I never really thought of before. And the calculation on it is because, maybe it's taking you in a circle or it's taking you around in a kind of an obscure kind of way. But then it's telling you, this is the shortest route. When in reality, when you run it, no, it's a little bit longer than the route I usually take. Only because the route I usually take is not updated correctly in the mapping software. So, you guys are computer science majors, or most of you are. Computers are not reliable. They don't necessarily, they're only as good as the information you give them. If the map is out of date or traffic conditions aren't recorded correctly, you could take twice as long to get somewhere than if you just followed your own human judgment. So there's also a fear of having to defend your own judgment if something were to go wrong. It's like, I thought this. Well, if I have an internet website, I can say, it says right here on Google that this is the route you're supposed to take, so that's why I'm taking it. I don't know how many times I've been in an Uber before where I'm like telling the guys, you know what, it would be much faster if you did this, went over to this route over here because that's a faster route. But then the Uber driver, no, gotta follow this route. This is the route I'm supposed to follow. It says it right here. This is our authorized route. And so, it's kind of an example of that one there. And then computer models and evaluating these models. How well do the modelers understand the underlying science or theory? Can you rely on a computer model, such as a mapping program as an example? To provide you with reliable information, is the model accurate? And then the models necessarily involve assumptions and simplifications of reality that may not actually be true. For example, if it says, how to remove, red wine from a carpet, Everyone, probably if this has ever happened to you, soda water actually is not too bad for it. But there's some, people on the internet that say, oh no, soda water that has artificial sweetener in it, not so good. Well, in reality, it doesn't matter. The artificial sweetener doesn't provide any stain, and it doesn't do any removal either. It's just extra stuff in the water. So it's okay, but the application doesn't know that, and it doesn't know. It just says pure soda water. It's like the other day, I needed to get some two-sided tape, which is basically tape that has stickiness on both sides of the tape. Well, I went over to Home Depot to pick up my two-sided tape. I wanted to tape something. I wanted to attach a picture to a wall, and I was looking to hang it with some two-sided tape. So then I pulled out what looked like two-sided tape, and then it said picture hanging something on it, on the label. But the label didn't say two-sided tape on it. So then I was, like, all right, let me just double-check this real quick here. So I was asking a sales associate, is this two-sided tape? And then I got the answer I didn't really want to hear, because it made me feel like, well, I'm smarter than the associate because I'm not relying upon what's on the package. So he picks up the package, looks at it, and says, well, it doesn't say two-sided tape. Nowhere on the package does it say it must not be two-sided tape. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You know what? It's just two-sided. I brought it home, opened it up. Yes, it was two-sided tape. It doesn't say two-sided tape on the package, probably because that's an old way of phrasing it. And it just said, you don't have to put a nail in the wall. You can hang a picture without puncturing the wall, and it hangs a picture, aka two-sided tape. But the package didn't say that. So that happens all the time on the internet. You try and search on something, but it's not in there. So it's not going to bring back a result that's going to show you, oh yeah, this is part of the result. So who knows what kind of information you get when the terminology might not necessarily be represented correctly. So how closely do the results of the predictions correspond to the results from physical experiments or real experience? That's actually another good question. Can you replace real experience and real human experience with internet technology? I'm not sure. And that's the controversial, the whole thing about dating online and meeting people and befriending people and having a human experience online. Is it really the same as a face-to-face experience? Well, that's kind of a controversy. For those people who've experienced face-to-face relationships and experiences, they would come back and say, nope, has no relationship at all. There's no comparison. Real experience cannot be simulated online. And then you have another group of people who maybe have never had a good real experience face-to-face, who might argue and say, you know what, online is better, or online works, or online is the same. Well, that's kind of sort of like the person who goes and orders the vacation package from showyourfriends-I-went-on-vacation.com with all the pictures of you going to Europe versus the person who actually went to Europe. I'd have to argue and say that going to Europe and experiencing Europe live on vacation is a more real experience and is different than buying a vacation package online that says you went to Europe, although you didn't really go to Europe. So having fake pictures of yourself is not the same. So I don't know. I mean, people would disagree with me on this one probably and say that online dating is the same. I don't know. I've never actually tried online dating because I don't think it's the same. I don't have any faith in it. But, maybe it is. Who knows? Why models are not accurate? Well, why aren't they accurate? Well, we might not have the complete knowledge of the system we are modeling. That is true. So how do you know that when you go to Match.com or when you go to some of these other sites that the questions and the information and everything that's in the program itself is what you're looking for or is what you're using as a guideline to look for or to find what you're interested in? How does that relate? Well, maybe the knowledge is not complete. Maybe they're missing a little piece of information, like how old is the profile picture? Or what is the problem with this person? Or, there's some things missing that, it's not quite complete. Or maybe the data describing the current condition or the characteristics may not be complete or accurate. I get this on eBay all the time. In fact, I have decided I'm never buying anything else on eBay because recently, actually this last week, I bought some attachments for a piece of exercise equipment that I have, and I broke a piece on it, and I saw it on eBay, and I bought it. It said it was supposed to be new, and the part arrived, and it was broken too. It was just probably worse than actually it was worse than my broken piece. And so then I tried to send it back, and they're like, no, we can't take this back. It's final sale. There's no returns on this. But they sold me a new part, and the description said it was brand new, and it was broken just like the piece I have right now that I was trying to replace with a brand new one. But it was misrepresented. Long story short, I filed a claim with eBay, so I'm going to get my money back on it. In fact, I've already been reimbursed on it, which is good. Because the seller committed fraud, essentially. So it's inaccurate. The condition is inaccurate. There's a lot of used stuff on eBay that's being represented as brand new that's not. I have not had this problem with Amazon, but I have had problems with Amazon with them shipping me the wrong product. But that's not really a product of inaccurate or incomplete characteristic of the item description. It's the system. So computing power may be inadequate for the complexity of the model as well. Usually this happens with like the GPS systems that don't have live traffic updates on them or something. So like maybe the system itself or the computing model technology is not good enough to make the model realistic or to make the model accurate. So it's also difficult, if not impossible, to numerically quantify variables and represent human values and choices. Yeah, that's kind of like what you get on one of those dating apps. You're pretty much going by the picture. If you go by the description of what's in there, it may or may not necessarily be what you're looking for. So people, in fact, when I buy products on the internet, I usually look at the descriptions, but then I look at the pictures, and if the picture doesn't match the description, and then I move on to another product. So here's some discussion questions on information knowledge and judgment. How do you evaluate the reliability of information you find on the web? How do you evaluate methods and compare to the way you evaluate information from other sources? Well, when I find something on the internet, and I'm going to answer the question just for myself, and you might have your own set of answers, and this is something to think about. How do you evaluate? I usually try to cross-reference something. Like if I find a story on something, and I look at the source and consider where did this come from? And then I try to find more stories on the same concept or the same story to verify that this story is legit. And then if I can find like 3 or 4 more sources that all are saying the same thing, then I can go, yeah, that's probably real. That seems to be a lot of work. Compared to like if you watch television and you see something on the news, I would be more apt to believe what I saw on ABC or NBC versus what I see on the internet. And I don't have to verify it multiple times. I can just look at it once. Only because I know that there's truth on the TV, there's no truth on the internet. So some computer models are better than others. What type of models work well, what types don't. I would also say models that don't involve humans, I think, work quite well. Like the GPS model is okay. And it's not 100% accurate, but I can get from point A to point B usually 99.9% of the time without actually having to think. The models that simulate, how things work, like YouTube is a model, for storing videos, that's pretty reliable. It doesn't rely on human thinking. It doesn't have anything human associated with it. It's all about presenting content and digital content. So computers and community. So it is human nature to form associations based on common interests. And so we all know about social media, and we all know about meeting people online. So some people feared that early technologies such as the telephone, thinking communication would be dehumanized. Yeah, actually, if you believe it, in the beginning of time, way before a lot of us here. Before we had the telephone, people didn't think the telephone was appropriate communication when you had to say something that was like sensitive, or it wasn't as real. And so people would meet face to face instead of using the telephone. Now it's kind of like the question about text messaging. Do you break up with somebody on text messaging? Do you send them a happy birthday message on text messaging? Or do you call them? And then people go, okay, so it's changed a bit. So now people go, oh yeah, let's call them on the phone to wish you a happy birthday instead of text messaging. And that was about, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. Now text messaging is okay. You can send them a text message or an email or something, and you can say, hey, happy birthday, without actually having to call them on the telephone. And perhaps in the future, the auto system, like you can set up these auto announcer systems with send out messages on everybody's birthday. Hey, this is from Barbara, happy birthday. And I don't even know that my computer's done this, and I don't even know it's your birthday, just the message comes out. Maybe that will be seen as more human in the future. Who knows? As technology changes and the times go by, it seems like the bar gets lowered and lowered. But yeah, there are still people who like face-to-face discussions, and it is still considered, in some circles, it's still considered offending if you send a text message on something that you probably should have called the person on to speak in person. So computers and the internet were blamed for the decline in the community involvement and membership in the clubs and organizations until they become computerized and until the internet took over. And now social media seems to be more popular than face-to-face organizations. So the internet provides communities focused on specialized interests or problems or associations. And just take a look at the way Facebook groups have come out. People would rather form communities online, because you don't necessarily need to be you. You can be anybody, which is kind of weird from a psychological perspective. There's some real people, though, but it's hard to tell who's actually being honest and who isn't, and it's hard to tell what type of community these people should be belonging to. So the internet brings people together from all over the world. Email, internet provides convenient, cheap ways for families and friends to stay in contact. Yeah, I would say military families really appreciate the internet, because if you're far away from your family, you can Skype or Zoom, or you can actually connect by email, either asynchronous or synchronously, to communicate, and it's cheap and it's affordable, and you can feel connected even though you're hundreds of thousands of miles away. New trends for social media, I wouldn't say they're new. MySpace is, I don't know why, well, this is the older version of the book. I'm sure the newer version takes MySpace and puts Facebook, but really if you think about what is Facebook, it's MySpace all over again. So actually I would say that Facebook is about as old as MySpace at this point, because if you think about it, it's kind of flawed in its own ways that were kind of different. And then virtual communities, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Second Life. You might Google Second Life. It's an interesting world. It is a virtual reality world where you can go to school, you can have a job, you can have a home, you have a fake life essentially online, and you live in the second life, and you have friends in the second life, and you have a community. It's weird. Google it. It's been around for a while. I would say since the late 90s, and it's still around. It's almost a cult kind of thing at this point. But if you think about it, it's kind of like World of Warcraft and some of the other online gaming systems. Second Life is not a gaming system, but there are games inside of it. But it's more of a community system where people can just join and become part of that instead of being in the real world. Or along with, the healthy adult would do it to complement the real world. But as we all know, the phenomena that's occurred with online gaming and some of the virtual reality websites and virtual reality platforms, the idea is that the person is escaping the real world. And it's caused some deaths. There's some people who don't eat or drink or sleep because they're constantly in this virtual reality world. And so they forget they're actually human. And so they don't take care of their human needs and they end up dying. And it's not a fluke. It happens all the time. So some discussion questions related to computers and community. How convincing is the argument that electronic commerce threatens small brick and mortar? Well, actually, right now, there is no brick and mortar anything, community businesses. So e-commerce, if it weren't for e-commerce, today's kind of situation wouldn't be so good. In fact, a lot of people were in I'm talking about the shelter in place. You can get by the shelter in place. You can buy groceries online. You can buy food online. You can do total e-commerce. So what do you need to ever leave your house for? It's kind of an interesting phenomena. I think people like to leave the house and people like to shop in a real store. But you don't actually have to. And there's nobody starving and there's no problems. I shouldn't say there isn't, but for the majority of people who are self-sufficient, who are surviving before the shelter in place, they're thriving in the shelter in place. It's not a bad thing. Now, I'm stereotyping, and I would say that there are groups of people who are hurt by this situation, but they were not in the same position prior to the start of the shelter in your own space, whatever it's called. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that in some ways, e-commerce and things like Grubhub and delivery services and things, they've kind of made it so that you can, and then think about it, you're still going to school. You just turned into an online student instead of a face-to-face student. Well, you're doing everything on the internet using technology. So it happens and it works. So it didn't stop you from completing your degree or finishing the class. You've picked up where you left off. So in some ways, technology is helpful. It doesn't threaten the life of the brick and mortar school. It just helps when a brick and mortar school is not available. So do you think communicating by text message and by social media sites depersonalizes or dehumanizes your relationship with friends? I think it used to. If I were to answer this for myself, and it's something for you to think about, I think it used to, but I don't know if it does that anymore. I think we've sort of adapted. So here's a concept that you may or may not have been exposed to before. It's called the digital divide. This is the haves and the haves and the have-nots when it comes to technology. So the world today, we have a computer access issue called the digital divide. So new technologies are only available to the wealthy. And so this kind of goes back to what I said about the shelter in place. For those people who are part of the digital divide, who have technology, who are versed in it, who can afford it, and who were able to survive and use it prior to the current situation, those people are thriving. It's the people who don't have access to it. Imagine yourself not having a computer, not having access to technology, not having the means to do your job or to attend your classes from home. Those people are suffering. And we really see the digital divide right now in the current situation of the world. So those people without technology are prohibited from actually doing anything. So they have limited access to the grocery store. They have limited access to food or to the things that they might need because they're not using technology and they have no means of accomplishing anything electronically. So the time it takes for new technology to make its way into the common use is decreasing, which is good. Which means, slowly the digital divide is getting better. Which means, there are people in this world who don't have a cell phone. There's people in this world who don't have a computer. So the cost is not only the only factor. Ease of use plays a role as well. Upbringing and education. There are some people that are afraid of a computer that we're in California, so we're in the heart of technology, but just go to the Midwest, you see people who don't use the internet, who don't use technology because they're afraid of it. They were never exposed to it. They think they can't learn it. They think it's too hard. So entrepreneurs, they provide low-cost options for people who cannot otherwise afford something. And it's not always cost, by the way, as the slide says. Cost is not the only factor, but cost is a huge issue. For example, homeless people who don't have any money can't afford, most of them can't afford cell phones, but for the most part, some government agencies actually give them cell phones that don't have any service on them, but they have 911 capabilities. But, if you're low income or if you're confined and you don't have the money, that's a factor. But if you do have the money, but you just don't know how to use the technology or you're afraid of the technology, that's also another problem. Government funds, they fund the technology in schools, which is helpful. So as technology becomes more prevalent, well, the issues shift from the haves and the have-nots to the level of service and the level of quality of service. And we're kind of sort of seeing that now. But the carriers of services, for example, most of your cell phone companies are providing really good bandwidth right now. Most of your ISPs, your internet service providers, are not cutting your service if you don't pay your bill. They're providing you with a good, high-quality level of service so that you can access things online. And there was a little skepticism in the beginning. Just a couple weeks ago, they were talking about how things like Netflix were going to take the internet down. And, people are skeptical. But Netflix actually did lower the bandwidth on their high definition. So they're giving a lower quality, like 480 instead of like high definition 1028 resolution. Because more people are streaming. They're really not working at home. They're watching Netflix at home, which, okay. But if people are just home more often right now, in fact, people should be home 100% of the time right now. And if they are, then yeah, they're going to use the TV and they're going to use Netflix and they're going to use the internet. But as things have been shown, and especially in the state of California, the internet has not gone down yet. The internet is up and running and everything seems to be working just fine. But there are areas outside of California in the Midwest and some areas on the East Coast where things are bad, where everybody's on the internet and so now the internet's going down. But we seem to be pretty lucky out here in California. So the global divide and the next billion users, well, approximately 1 billion people worldwide have access to the web. And approximately 5 billion do not. And going back to what I was saying about California, we're in a technology savvy area. Not every state in the United States has the same number of people on the web. For everybody you think who is on the web, there's 5 times as many people who are not on the web. And the nonprofit organizations and huge computer companies are spreading computer access to people in developing countries, which is good. So areas remotely, actually even in the United States, there's some new high schools in Alaska, online high schools. Actually, there's a couple online high schools in California as well, where remote people who live in remote areas who don't actually cannot commute to a physical school. They can still go to grade school and they can still go to high school online without actually having to do the homeschooling. So bringing new technology to poor countries is not just a matter of the money to buy the equipment. PCs, laptops must work in extreme environments with maybe some, different levels of humidity, moisture in the air, depending upon if it's a tropical area or not, or dry area, cold area, hot area. So sometimes the weather might change between different places. But it's not just a matter of money either at the same time. There's a matter of education. You can bring a computer to a human, but what if the human doesn't know what to do with it? Then you got a problem. It's like, you bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So some people are actively working to shrink the divide. And the digital divide just means that there's a divide in culture and there's a divide in society with regards to technology. Some people who are technology savvy and some people who are not, for the various reasons. So, and we are really seeing the digital divide right now. So some people actively working to shrink it, and hopefully they'll be successful at it, and you provide access in ways that are appropriate for the local culture, that meet in with the cultural standards, that don't, that don't have conflict with what's going on locally. So, all right. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Some people think that computers cause massive unemployment. Right now, actually, computers are keeping people employed. Although some people that don't have computer-related jobs right now are unemployed. But for the most part, yeah, computers did take over. When they first started, people were afraid of computer and technology in general because they did replace humans in jobs. For example, just the simple, there's no more such thing as a typist anymore or a data entry person. In fact, for the most part, I think in the future, retail salespeople are going to go away because we don't need them scanning items when the customer can scan it themselves. So if you think about it, yeah, technology does replace some jobs, but are those jobs worth doing? If a computer can do it better than the human, then really maybe the human should retrain for a different type of job. So, and then we have this no real need. We use technology because they are there, but because they satisfy real needs, they don't satisfy real needs. Technology. In fact, this is another common thing. You see this in California a lot as well. You think, well, technology is great, but we don't really need it. You can put the technology away, like don't use technology, or you have a bunch of people that with this mindset that they don't really need it. It's just complementary. But if you think about it, it's kind of becoming a real need. What if the post offices close? How are you going to pay your bills? Yeah, in the old days, you could write, you receive a bill in the mail, you write a check and you send it back to them in the mail, and that worked. But what if there's no more U.S. mail service? You should be able to do it electronically. So there is a need. There is a need for electronics. Also, a lot of people don't even have a landline. So if you don't have a landline, people don't even know what a landline actually means. It's like a wired telephone line into your house. That was the old technology, analog or digital phone line that actually was a home line. They called it a landline. Most people don't even have those anymore. They just use cellular phones. So the cellular phone as a technology component is a need. How else are you going to communicate with the world? So computers, they cause social inequity. Well, they could cause it. Benefits that big businesses and governments, do little or nothing to solve real problems. I don't know. Computers separate humans from nature and destroy the environment. Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of extremists, and these are the people who, and this slide is kind of giving you the extreme viewpoint on it. You want to give all evaluations of the impact. In this particular one, there are some people that do think there's a separation from human and nature. Actually, there was a commercial for the longest time about friends and social media where they had this teenage girl sitting at a kitchen table, and she had like 2 million friends online, and she was being active, and she was sitting in the dark in the kitchen table while her parents were out mountain biking in the mountains or something. And it was actually kind of a funny commercial, but it was trying to get at, she's got 10 million friends, but look at her. She's at home on a kitchen table in the dark, wasting time all day, while the parents, who didn't have any computer technology at all, were outside having fun, mountain biking. So, okay. So accomplishments of the technology, well, prices for food are down and raw materials are abundant. That's the one thing I like about the internet and technology is I can find whatever I want. So if my local store doesn't carry my brand of something, I don't care. I just go buy it on the internet. In fact, I use Amazon for it. In fact, I can find things cheaper on the internet than I can in the store because there's no cost of delivering it to the store. So the real buying power is up. So food supplies, everything's growing faster than the population. We have an abundance of products. We have an abundance of distribution, dramatic impact on life expectancy. Yeah, you can get the drugs you need. You can get the vitamins. You can find out information, and then you can use that information to help you to better yourself. Also, assistive technologies benefit those with disabilities. As I was mentioning before, that app that identified things for the blind. But you also have other technology that's out there that assists people so that they can be functional. In fact, if you have a severe disability and you're confined to your home, aka you're sheltering in place for the average American right now, you can still get by. You can still order groceries. You can still get things done without ever having to leave your house, which is a great thing. So the difficulty of prediction. So each new technology finds new and unexpected uses. And sometimes they're negative, sometimes they're positive. Crime has gone up, cyber terrorism has gone up, issues with the internet have developed for political campaigns, for all sorts of scams and scandals out there. So the history of technology is full of wildly wrong predictions. Yeah, people thought, actually Bill Gates originally thought nobody would ever use the internet for anything, which is actually kind of funny. So speech recognition technology, yeah, no one expected that actually to be a big thing. Just think about your Alexas and your Google Assist and all those. Speech recognition is a pretty good technology. So mistaken expectations of the cost and the benefit. Actually that's a big thing right now when you consider technology products. Do I need a Ring doorbell? Do I need an Alexa? Do I need all this other stuff? What is the expectation in terms of what is it going to provide me and at what cost? That stuff is really out of sync right now, actually. Some of the stuff is pretty expensive. Some of the stuff is pretty cheap. Whether you're going to use it or not, that's a bigger question. And whether or not it's going to add any value to your quality of life, that's another unpredictable question. Should we decline a technology because of potential abuse and ignore the benefits? That's kind of like what's happening with the internet. If we don't use the internet, we miss out on a lot of information. If we do allow our children to go on the internet, then they're going to be victims. Predators are going to attack them. I don't know. There's pros and cons to children on the internet. There's pros and cons to older adults on the internet. There's pros and cons to everybody on the internet. Depends on whether or not the benefit outweighs the risks and the vulnerabilities. New technologies are often expensive, but cost drops as the technology advances. Yeah, you can buy a lot of cool technology products at Walmart actually these days. And you don't have to go to a computer store to buy and like 90% of the technologies out there. You can go to Costco and Walmart and superstores, and it's pretty cheap now. So intelligent machines and super intelligent humans, are there. Over the end of are computers taking over human thinking and human intelligence? Well, that's another age old. These are the discussions. These are the discussion questions. So, is it the end of the human race? I don't know. Technology singularity, the point at which artificial intelligence or some combination advances so far that we can't tell or we can't comprehend what lies on the other side. Do we know if we're talking to a human or are we talking to an AI? Think about the Turing test. If you're not familiar with AI, there's a concept called the Turing test where Alan Turing actually put it together, where it was a test to see if something was good enough to pass as AI, whether or not, if you put up a barrier and you put a human and you put a computer and you asked it a question or you had to do a task or something, and you couldn't tell which one responded, whether it was the human or whether it was the AI, then it was true AI. That's a good test. And if so, could AI, and can computer technology take over the human? I don't know why humans are so worried about that. It seems like that's something from the past, however. It doesn't seem something that's common today. So we cannot prepare for the aftermath, but prepare for more gradual developments. Yeah, I don't know if we really need to prepare for anything. I mean, technology is in the eye of the beholder, and if you're afraid of it, maybe there is a preparation. If you're not afraid of it and you're embracing it, then it can just improve the quality of life. So, select a decision-making process most likely to produce what people want. Yep, that's right. It's going on right now, and it has been kind of the trend. Provide the solutions that people are okay with. You know, here's how e-commerce can fit in. This is how Amazon can benefit your life. So if you could decide what technology should be developed, what would you develop? Oh, that's a loaded question. I don't know if I can answer that question, but I would say something that would help people be more effective and more productive in their work environments. So, does the prospect of super intelligent robots scare you? No, it does not scare me, but it does scare others. So I'm not afraid of AI. I'm embracing AI for the most part. So, well, that is all I can give you in terms of the chapter. This lecture was on Chapter 7, Evaluating and Controlling Technologies. The content is kind of relevant in terms of today's climate. For the most part, a lot of this is very historical, in my opinion, as well. So stay tuned for another lecture on another topic, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. And well, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can send me an email. Talk to you later.